The galaxy had seen many faces, but never before had it seen the face of Earth's newest envoy, Ethan Cole. He was not a soldier, nor a high-ranking politician. Instead, he was an engineer who had worked his way into diplomacy because of his sharp mind and calm heart. Humanity had chosen him to represent them at the royal court of Lyrathia, a world known for its shining towers, floating gardens, and skies that glowed with shifting bands of color. When the shuttle landed on the crystal platform outside the palace, Ethan felt a mix of nerves and awe. The Lyrathians were unlike any other species humans had met. Tall and elegant, their skin shimmered faintly under light as if woven with tiny stars. Their long hair, often silver or pale blue, flowed like liquid. But their most striking feature was their eyes, large and glowing softly, filled with ancient wisdom and deep curiosity. Ethan adjusted the simple but formal jacket he wore. He knew this meeting was important. Humanity's alliance with Lyrathia could mean safety and trade across the stars. Still, he reminded himself to breathe and not stumble over his words. The great doors opened, revealing the palace hall. The floor was polished crystal, reflecting the beams of sunlight that filtered through tall arches. Guards stood in rows, their armor thin yet strong, like plates of glass hardened by unknown science. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, sat the royal family. And at the center was Princess Auralia. Ethan had read about her. She was known for her wisdom despite her young age, her voice in the council often carrying more weight than many older lords. Yet no book or report could have prepared him for seeing her in person. She rose from her seat as he approached. Her gown flowed like living light, colors shifting between violet and silver as she moved. Her skin glowed faintly, smooth and unearthly. Her hair, long and silver white, caught the light in strands that seemed alive, and her eyes, bright golden and steady, fixed on Ethan with quiet strength. Ethan bowed as he had been trained, placing a hand over his chest. "Your Highness," he said, steadying his voice, "I am honored to stand before you." Auralia inclined her head gracefully. Her voice was smooth, carrying the music of her people's language even as it shifted into words his translator could render. "We welcome you, Ethan Cole of Earth. Few humans have stood in this hall. Today you carry the voice of your world." Ethan straightened and met her gaze. For a moment, he forgot the rehearsed lines, the careful diplomatic phrases. Instead, a very human thought escaped his lips before he could stop himself. "You're gorgeous." The hall grew very quiet. The guards shifted slightly, their glowing eyes narrowing. Advisors in shimmering robes exchanged quick glances. The word gorgeous had slipped out of his mouth so naturally, but he realized it might not even have a translation. His ears burned with embarrassment. Princess Auralia tilted her head. Her expression did not show anger. Instead, her cheeks, pale and glowing faintly like moonlight, flushed with a deeper hue. Ethan had not known it was possible for a Lyrathian to blush, but here she was, her gaze softening in a way that surprised everyone in the room. "What is this word?" she asked after a pause. Her voice was curious, not offended. "This gorgeous," Ethan swallowed. "It is a human word," he said carefully, trying to explain without stumbling. "It means beyond beautiful, not just pleasing to the eye, but striking. It is what we say when someone's presence feels unforgettable." The princess studied him silently. Then, to the shock of her advisors, her lips curved into a faint smile. "Repeat it, human," she said softly. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected her to ask that. The guards were tense, watching him closely, but her golden eyes seemed to lock onto his. For a moment, the grand palace, the guards, the advisors, everything faded, and only the two of them remained. He took a small breath. "You are gorgeous." This time he said it with steadier confidence, his voice gentle but clear. The word echoed in the vast crystal hall. Princess Auralia lowered her eyes slightly, as though the compliment had settled in her heart. Her blush deepened, and though she quickly returned her calm royal composure, Ethan saw the faint curve of amusement on her lips. "Humans," she murmured, almost to herself, "speak with strange courage." The advisors seemed restless. One of them stepped forward, bowing. "Your Highness, perhaps we should proceed with the matters of the council," he urged, his voice edged with discomfort. "This human's words are unusual." But Auralia raised her hand, silencing him without looking away from Ethan. "Unusual does not mean unwelcome," she said calmly. Then she turned to Ethan once more. You will walk with me in the gardens. There we may speak further." Ethan blinked. The palace hall murmured with surprise. A personal invitation from the princess herself was rare, if not unheard of. But he bowed slightly. "It would be my honor." The palace garden stretched beyond the crystal walls, alive with glowing plants and drifting orbs of light. The air was cool and sweet, filled with the hum of energy fields that kept the atmosphere balanced. As they walked, Aurelia studied Ethan in silence. Finally she spoke. "You chose a word of your people instead of words of politics," she said. "Most who stand in that hall give speeches filled with titles, power, and promises. Yet you gave me something simple." She paused, her golden eyes glimmering. "Why?" Ethan thought for a moment before answering. "Because sometimes the truth is more important than rehearsed lines. And the truth is that when I saw you, the word came naturally. To me it was honest." Aurelia stopped walking. She looked at him, her face unreadable for a moment. Then slowly she smiled. Not the polite smile of royalty, but a genuine one, warm and unguarded. "Humans may be stranger than I thought," she admitted. Ethan chuckled softly. "We get that a lot." Her laughter, quiet and musical, echoed through the glowing garden. Ethan realized he had crossed a line, not in offense, but in a way that had sparked something new. He didn't know where it would lead, but he knew this meeting would not be forgotten. As the glowing orbs floated above them, Princess Aurelia tilted her head once more and asked, almost playfully, "Tell me again, human, what am I?" Ethan smiled. "Gorgeous." The garden of Lyrathia's palace glowed like a dream. Trees with crystal leaves shimmered in soft light, and flowers opened their petals only when someone walked near them. The air itself seemed alive, carrying a faint hum that felt like music. Ethan walked carefully beside Princess Aurelia, still trying to understand how quickly everything had changed. Only hours ago he was practicing stiff diplomatic lines. Now he was following the princess through glowing paths after calling her gorgeous. She moved gracefully, her gown catching the colors of the garden lights. But she was not silent. Instead, she kept glancing at him, as if studying a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Finally, she spoke. "Human Ethan," she said softly, "your word still lingers in my thoughts. Gorgeous. It is not in our tongue, yet I feel I understand it. Tell me, do you speak such words often to others of your kind?" Ethan chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "Not really, Your Highness. Humans don't throw it around carelessly. When we say it, it means we truly feel it." Her golden eyes lingered on him, curious. "So when you said it to me, it was not empty speech." "It was honest," Ethan said. "I didn't plan to say it, but sometimes the truth just comes out." For a moment she lowered her gaze. Her cheeks faintly glowed again with that strange blush. Then she straightened, regaining her calm expression. "Strange," she whispered. "Humans speak with disarming honesty. Most envoys cover their words with layers of politeness. Yet you peel them away." Ethan smiled. "Maybe because I'm not really a politician. I'm an engineer who somehow got sent here. I fix broken machines, not treaties. But maybe that helps. I see things as they are." Her lips curved slightly upward. "Perhaps that is why I find speaking with you refreshing." As they walked deeper into the gardens, Ethan noticed 2 palace guards keeping distance behind them. Their glowing eyes followed him with suspicion. Clearly not everyone liked this unusual conversation. Aurelia must have sensed it too, for she lowered her voice. "The council does not trust humans easily. They see you as unpredictable, too new to the stars, too eager. They think you may be reckless." Ethan gave a small laugh. "They're not wrong about us being new. We've only just joined the wider galaxy. But reckless? I'd say. Resourceful. We survive by finding answers where others don't." Aurelia tilted her head. "Resourceful? A useful trait." She studied him for another long moment, then asked, "Tell me of your people, Ethan. What drives them across the void? What do they seek in places far from their home?" Ethan looked up at the glowing sky where 3 moons hung like pale lanterns. "We seek connection. We've spent most of our history fighting and struggling on one small world. But when we looked up, we realized there was more. We wanted to learn, to share, to prove we're more than just one planet. Maybe we wanted to prove we belong among the stars." Her golden eyes softened as if his words touched something within her. She walked in silence for a while, then finally said, "To prove you belong. That I understand." Their path led to a wide crystal pond. Light danced on its surface, reflecting the moons above. Ethan noticed a small disturbance in the air, a faint flicker near the pond's edge. Then with a sharp crack, a barrier post nearby sparked and went dark. Immediately, the glowing shield around the garden shimmered weakly. One of the guards. The days that followed brought a rhythm Ethan had not expected. Each morning he was invited to walk with Princess Aurelia through the palace gardens or along the glowing city balconies. They spoke of their worlds, their people, their hopes. For Ethan, the conversations were a mix of diplomacy and something far more personal. For Aurelia, they were like opening doors she had never walked through before. But not everyone approved. The royal council watched him with suspicion. The guard's glowing eyes followed his every step. Whispers echoed in the palace halls. Humans were reckless, too bold, too strange. Some called Ethan a distraction. Others feared he was manipulating the princess with his unusual charm. Ethan could feel the tension. Even when Aurelia laughed softly at his human jokes, he noticed the stiff faces of her advisors. Still, he kept being himself. He answered her questions honestly. He showed her small tricks like how to fold a paper bird, which amazed her because it was simple yet beautiful. But beneath the palace calm, danger brewed. One evening, Aurelia wished to see the lower city beyond the palace walls. "I want to walk among my people," she told Ethan, "not as a princess on a throne, but as one who listens." Ethan hesitated. "Will the council allow that?" Her lips curved into a quiet smile. "The council need not know every step I take." With only 2 guards, they left the palace in a small hover car. The lower city was alive with glowing markets, crystal bridges, and streams of light weaving through the streets. Citizens bowed as they recognized their princess, but she waved gently, speaking kindly to those who approached. Ethan watched her with quiet admiration. She was more than a royal figure. She truly cared for her people. As they crossed a narrow street lined with crystal lanterns, Ethan noticed something odd. A group of figures stood at the corner, cloaked in shadows. Their eyes glowed faintly, but not with the same steady light of palace guards. It was sharper, restless. The hair on the back of Ethan's neck rose. He leaned closer to Aurelia. "Your Highness, we need to move." Before she could answer, the figures rushed forward. "Protect the princess," shouted one of the guards. The attackers moved fast, wielding strange rods that crackled with energy. The guards clashed with them, crystal blades meeting sparks of light. Ethan grabbed Aurelia's arm, pulling her back as the fight erupted in the narrow street. One attacker broke past the guards, lunging toward Aurelia. Ethan reacted without thinking. He shoved the princess aside and caught the attacker's arm. The weapon sparked, burning across his sleeve, but he twisted hard, forcing the weapon down. The alien hissed, surprised by the human strength. Ethan drove his shoulder into the attacker, knocking him back. "Run!" Ethan shouted to Aurelia, but she didn't run. She stood her ground, her golden eyes wide but steady. Another attacker closed in, raising his rod. Ethan stepped in front of her, fists clenched. He had no weapon, but his voice was firm. "You won't touch her." The attacker hesitated. Perhaps it was Ethan's stance or the way his voice carried no fear. In that heartbeat, one of the guards struck, disarming the enemy. The clash ended as quickly as it began. 2 attackers fled into the shadows, while one lay unconscious at the guard's feet. Citizens peered nervously from windows, whispering in shock. Aurelia placed a hand on Ethan's arm. "Are you hurt?" Ethan looked at the burn mark on his sleeve and shrugged. "Nothing serious. I've had worse from fixing power coils." Her eyes softened. "You shielded me, without thought for yourself." He gave her a crooked smile. "Well, you are gorgeous. Can't let harm come to someone like that." Her cheeks glowed again with that faint blush, even as guards looked at them in disbelief. She held his gaze a moment longer, then turned to the captured attacker. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The guard pulled back the hood. The alien's features were sharp, his eyes burning with defiance. "We act for those who see the truth," he spat. "The council is weak. And this human, this outsider, corrupts our princess with strange words. We will not allow it." Ethan felt the tension rise. Aurelia's face grew calm, but her voice was steel. "You will answer for this before the council." Back at the palace, the council chamber buzzed with voices. The captured attacker was taken into custody, but his words spread quickly. A faction opposed to humans, claiming Ethan's influence was dangerous. Some advisors pointed at him openly. "This is the proof we feared. Already your presence divides our people." Ethan stood silently, letting them speak, but Aurelia rose, her voice cutting through the noise. "Enough," she commanded. The chamber fell silent. She turned toward Ethan, then back to the council. This human saved my life today. He acted with courage when others would have fled. Is that the act of a corrupter? Or of an ally? The room stirred, uncertain. Ethan lowered his eyes slightly, not wanting to draw more fire. Later, as the council dismissed, Auralia walked with him through the quiet halls. You see now, she said softly, why some fear your kind. They do not understand you. They do not understand words like yours, honest, unguarded. It frightens them. Ethan looked at her, his voice calm. Does it frighten you? She stopped, golden eyes meeting his. No, she whispered. It intrigues me. That night, as Ethan sat in his guest quarters, he replayed the ambush in his mind. He had acted on instinct, protecting her without thought. It wasn't just diplomacy anymore. Something about her kindness, her strength, the way she blushed at a single word, pulled at him. And somewhere in the palace, Auralia too sat awake, remembering his words spoken in the heat of danger. Well, you are gorgeous. She had faced enemies before. She had heard countless titles and praises. But no one had ever spoken to her like that with such simple, unshaken honesty. The danger was growing. The rival faction would not stop easily. Yet as fear crept closer, so too did something else, a connection neither of them could deny. The capital city of Valoria spread out beneath shining towers, each one built with crystal and metal that caught the sunlight. From above, the city looked like a jewel placed in the middle of green hills and silver rivers. Kaelin had never seen such a place before. For a human used to steel stations and rough colonies, Valoria was almost too perfect. But Kaelin was not here as a tourist. He was here because of the princess. And now, for the first time since stepping foot on this world, he felt the weight of what that meant. The royal palace guards escorted him through tall doors carved with ancient runes. The doors opened into a long chamber lit by glowing crystals. At the far end, 12 figures sat on high seats arranged in a circle. The Valorian Council. Each member represented a house of power, and together they held more influence than the king himself. Princess Saria walked beside Kaelin. She moved with grace, but he noticed her shoulders were stiff, as if she already knew what was coming. The lead counselor, an elder with silver hair and sharp eyes, rose to speak. His voice carried across the chamber with authority. Human Kaelin, he said, your actions have stirred whispers across our world. You stand beside our princess as though you are her equal, yet you are not Valorian. You are an outsider. Kaelin kept his gaze steady. He did not bow. He had faced alien captains and smugglers who wanted him dead. This council, no matter how powerful, would not break him with words. I never claimed to be more than I am, Kaelin replied. I spoke to her with honesty. If that offends you, then perhaps honesty is what this council fears. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. No one spoke to the council like that. Saria quickly stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Kaelin has shown nothing but respect, she said. He saved lives in the outlying colonies. He stood with me when danger struck. His words were not an insult, but a truth spoken without fear. The counselor narrowed his eyes. And what truth is that, princess? Saria hesitated and then glanced at Kaelin. Her cheeks warmed slightly, though her voice stayed clear. That I am more than a symbol. That I can be called beautiful, or even gorgeous, and that it need not be shameful for a human to see me so. The chamber filled with murmurs. The word gorgeous echoed in the counselors' minds like a challenge. It was not the kind of word they used for royalty. To them it was bold, unpolished, dangerous. Another counselor, younger and with a cold expression, spoke next. Princess, you forget your place. You are the face of Valoria. You are to marry one of our chosen houses. Yet this human plants ideas in your heart that could undo centuries of order. We cannot allow this. Kaelin felt his fists tighten. But before he could speak, Saria stepped closer to him. She stood so the council could see her choice with their own eyes. Perhaps it is time your centuries of order were questioned, she said. The words landed like thunder. For a moment the chamber went silent. The counselors exchanged uneasy glances. They had expected the princess to defend Kaelin lightly, not to stand openly against them. The lead counselor's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. You speak boldly, princess, but boldness draws enemies. If this human remains, he will place a target not only on himself but on you. The empire beyond our borders listens. Already they whisper that Valoria grows weak. Do you mean to give them proof? The mention of the empire sent a chill through Kaelin. He had heard of them, ruthless conquerors who waited for signs of weakness before striking. Saria lifted her chin. "I would rather face an empire with allies I trust than bow to fear," she answered. The counselor turned his gaze back to Kalen. "You see where your presence created." The sky above Valoria was alive with streaks of light. Human-made scanners and Valorian sensors confirmed what no one wanted to admit. The Empire's fleet was approaching fast. Hundreds of ships, dark and angular, glinting under the three moons. It was a force designed to intimidate, to overwhelm, to conquer. Inside the palace command room, the glow from holographic screens painted faces in shifting shades of blue. Princess Saria stood at the front, her golden eyes steady. Kalen stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. "The council was right about the Empire," one of the advisors muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. "We are outnumbered. Resistance is impossible." Saria shook her head. "Impossible is a word for those who surrender before trying." "We are not surrendering." Kalen stepped forward. "Your Highness, the council may see weakness in numbers, but they do not see strategy. Human ingenuity does not depend on fleets alone. We can use the terrain, the shields, and the city itself to outmaneuver them." She looked at him, admiration shining in her eyes. "You truly believe we can face them?" "I do," he said, "and I believe we can win." Outside, the first Empire ships pierced the orbit like black spears. Citizens of Valoria looked up, fear in their glowing eyes. Kalen and Saria moved to the observation deck. The fleet's presence was terrifying. Hundreds of vessels, bristling with weapons, moving with disciplined precision. But Kalen noticed a pattern. "They are following a rigid formation," he said. "If we can predict their moves, we can turn their strength against them." Saria nodded. "Then we must act quickly. Alert the fleet commanders. Prepare the city defenses." In the following hours, Valoria's engineers and Kalen worked together, combining Valorian crystal technology and human tactics. He showed them how to create decoys, redirect energy flows, and use reflective surfaces to confuse enemy sensors. Saria oversaw the plans, her voice calm but commanding, inspiring confidence among those who feared defeat. At one point, Kalen turned to her. "You'll lead the main defense. Your people will follow your example." Her cheeks glowed faintly, not from fear but from something warmer. "And you, human, will guide them through your cleverness." "I trust you." He felt the weight of her trust. In moments like this, honesty mattered more than anything. He remembered the first time he had called her gorgeous, and how it had changed the way they saw each other. As night fell, the Empire began its attack. Ships moved into firing positions. Laser beams tore across the atmosphere, striking Valoria's defensive shields. Sparks flew, energy rippled through the streets, and alarms screamed. Kalen directed shield operators while Saria coordinated the city's defense teams. Their movements were seamless. Kalen gave precise instructions while Saria's presence inspired courage in those around her. Citizens fought alongside the palace guards, inspired by the princess's courage and the human's boldness. In the heat of battle, Kalen spotted an Empire ship preparing to target the palace itself. Without hesitation, he grabbed a control panel and rerouted energy to the city's largest mirror arrays. They reflected the beam back toward the enemy ship, damaging its hull. "Take cover," Kalen shouted to nearby guards. The ship shuddered and exploded in a blaze of light, scattering smaller vessels. Saria's eyes widened. "You did it. You saved us." Kalen smiled briefly, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Just a trick humans learned on old worlds. Nothing fancy." Her blush returned soft and warm. "You truly are remarkable," she said quietly, "and brave." Kalen felt a strange warmth at her words, deeper than admiration. It was trust, recognition, and something more personal. He simply nodded, returning to the fight. Hours passed. The Empire adjusted, sending more ships, but Kalen and Saria continued their coordination. They moved like partners in a dance, Kalen using ingenuity and quick thinking, Saria providing leadership and courage. At one point, a large enemy ship breached the city perimeter. Kalen and a team of guards boarded a defense vessel, launching a counterattack. Saria joined them in the skies, directing the smaller Valorian ships with calm precision. During the chaos, Kalen shouted, "Princess, watch out!" She spun just as a beam struck near her ship. Kalen maneuvered his vessel between her and danger, taking the brunt of the strike. Sparks flew across his controls, smoke curling in the cabin. "Are you all right?" Saria called. Kaelin grinned through the pain. I'm fine. Focus on them. Her golden eyes softened. You are gorgeous, she whispered, almost as if to herself. Kaelin froze for a moment, caught off guard, not by the word, but by the sincerity in her voice. The battle raged around them, but that single word carried a weight neither of them had expressed before. He began, but she interrupted. Not now, she said, a soft smile on her lips. Later we will speak of it. Kaelin nodded, understanding. There would be time for words after victory. By dawn, the Empire's fleet began to retreat. Their formations had been broken, ships lost or damaged. Valoria's defenses had held. Citizens cheered, though many were exhausted. The palace lights glowed brighter, reflecting the hope of a world saved not by numbers alone but by cleverness, courage, and trust. Kaelin and Saria returned to the palace courtyard where citizens gathered. Saria stepped forward, addressing her people. Today, Valoria faced a great threat, but we survived because we stood together, because we trusted each other, and because bravery, no matter its form, shines brighter than fear. Kaelin stood quietly beside her. He had never been praised publicly before, yet he felt no need for recognition. His role was simple: protect, guide, and be honest. The princess turned to him. Your courage saved lives, Kaelin. You have proven more than your words could ever convey. Kaelin shook his head, smiling. I only did what anyone would do for someone worth saving. She looked at him, her eyes glowing softly. Worth saving, yes. You are extraordinary, and I am glad you are here. The blush returned to her cheeks, soft but undeniable. Kaelin's heart beat faster, but he kept his focus. He had survived battles, and now he had survived the tension of standing beside someone whose trust meant everything. As the sun rose over the crystal towers, Kaelin realized something important. Victory was not just in fighting ships or clever tactics. It was in trust, in courage, and in words spoken honestly. Even simple words like gorgeous could matter more than any weapon. And for the first time, he understood that the bond he shared with Princess Saria would shape the future of Valoria, of humanity, and of the galaxy itself. The morning after the Empire's retreat was quiet but filled with anticipation. The citizens of Valoria moved cautiously through the streets, repairing damage from the battle and whispering among themselves about the bravery of their princess and the human who had helped save them. The crystal towers gleamed under the soft light of the three moons, reflecting the new hope that had been kindled in everyone's hearts. Princess Saria walked through the courtyard, accompanied by Kaelin. Their steps were steady, their presence calm, though every pair of glowing eyes in the palace followed them. She had to attend to the wounded, speak with the council, and assure the citizens that the Empire's threat would not be repeated. Yet, despite the weight of duty, there was a gentleness in her eyes when they met Kaelin's. You acted bravely, she said quietly, as they approached a repaired fountain, its water sparkling like liquid crystal. You could have stayed behind, taken cover, but you faced danger directly. That is not something easily forgotten. Kaelin smiled, brushing dust from his jacket. I only did what anyone would do for someone worth saving. Her cheeks glowed faintly at his words, and she looked away for a moment. Then in a quiet, almost shy tone, she said, Worth saving. Yes, you are extraordinary, Kaelin. I am glad you are here. The warmth in her words made his chest tighten. He had faced battles across galaxies, but this honesty, this trust, was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Later, Kaelin was called to the council chambers. The council had reconvened to discuss the aftermath of the battle, and he knew they would scrutinize every action he had taken. He entered to find the lead counselor seated, eyes sharp but no longer hostile. Kaelin, the elder said slowly, it seems we misjudged humans. Your strategies, your bravery, have proven your worth. You are not just an outsider. You are an ally. Kaelin inclined his head respectfully. Thank you, counselor. I only acted to protect those who needed protection. That is all. Another counselor spoke next, softer than the first. The princess has shown great judgment in trusting you. Perhaps we too can learn from her choice. Kaelin nodded, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. The council's respect was not what mattered most, but it signaled a new beginning, one where humans could stand not as strangers, but as partners. That evening, the palace gardens were calm again. The battle had passed and the city was safe. Saria asked Kaelin to walk with her along the glowing paths, away from the council and the palace lights. "You have done much for Valoria," she said softly, "not just in battle, but in showing me a truth I had forgotten. That honesty and courage matter more than appearances or tradition." Kaelin looked at her, remembering the first day he had called her gorgeous, and how her blush had surprised him. "Your Highness, that truth began the first time I spoke it to you," he said gently. "You may not realize it, but those words mattered because you believed in them." She stopped walking, her den eyes meaty.